Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca.
I'm Landon.
And we have a favorite reoccurring guest. And by reoccurring, I mean we have him on all the time because he's so amazing. Dr. Randy Bell. How are you this evening, Randy?
Hello, Rebecca and Landon. It's an honor to be back. Thank you.
Yeah, this is great. Whenever we podcast with Randy, it's usually like the day before we're like ranting about something or posting back and forth. And we're like, we gotta get on the air and talk about this. But I think you guys are going to find this a very interesting topic. We are going to be talking about the name of, well, what we've been told to call it, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, right? That's what
you mean the Mormon Church?
Yeah, or LDS. I know this is what I'm talking about. So recently there have been a couple things that have come out that have led some of us to believe that they're really distancing themselves from that, Latter-day Saint part of the name. There was the influencer that said she was contacted by a media company for the church and told how to put together, a post for social media. And one of the criteria was don't say LDS, don't say Latter-day Saints. So that was interesting. And then I came across a post where somebody said, yeah, I was asked to teach Sunday school. And the Sunday school president said to me, did you get the email from the church that you're only supposed to say Church of Jesus Christ in your teaching, when you refer to the church? So whether or not that was just that person's stake or if it was higher, we don't know, but we're hearing this all the time. What the heck are we supposed to call it? Right, Randy?
It's confusing.
It is. It's really confusing. And so we've been talking about this, and Randy put together this awesome list just on Facebook going, this name, the Church of Jesus Christ, has been used over and over and over. And we're like, okay, we got to do a podcast about this. So Randy's going to take us through the long and twisted path of the name of the Mormon Church, the LDS Church, the Church of Jesus Christ. I don't even know anymore.
No kidding. It is utterly confusing. As you guys know, as I always like to start podcasts, I want to say, don't believe a word I say, research what I say, think for ourselves. And I want to point out, you will never hear that in general conference.
No, you hear the exact opposite. Believe every word I say and don't research anything outside of.
Read all the unapproved materials you want. It's a good, healthy thing. So I want to start with this because this is an absolute truth claim that's baked into Mormon scripture. You can't get away with it. And to give an overarching big picture of what's going on here, and this is my own personal opinion, but the church is trying to Christianize itself, which is amazing because I remember not too long ago, there was utter and complete disdain for all things Christian. And it goes right back to this quote from the Joseph Smith history, which is in the Doctrine and Covenants. This is Mormon scripture. This says they were all wrong. In the courtroom, when you say all, you find one exception, you're toast. That's called an absolute. They're all wrong. All of their creeds are an abomination, which is amazing because one of the creeds in Christianity is called the Jesus Creed, which is simply love your neighbor. And so it's hard to fathom. I mean, that blows up this whole claim here that Mormon God is making, and all their professors are corrupt, all of them. And now they want to be Christian with this rebranding thing. And we're going to go through the evolution of the brands. But I think it's important to start with this to show how this is baked into Mormon theology, and now they're going to completely 180 degrees away from it. I am famous for getting into Facebook disputes and debates all the time, and they say all these things about, we're Christian, and I put this quote up, and I never hear from these people again. So any of your thoughts before we move on?
Slammed down by Randy. That's it. Don't argue with Randy online. He brings the receipts every time.
Well, and that's not Joseph Smith speaking. That's God speaking.
It's Mormon God. There's a difference.
Yeah, Mormon God. Yeah, okay. I would agree with that. But Mormon God is saying all of them are an abomination. So yeah, you got to throw God under the bus if you're going to say, oh, no. We've always agreed with them.
Exactly. So, excuse me. We want to I wanted to start with Dartmouth, and because this is where they got the first name of the church. A lot of people don't know this, and a lot of people have heard it, but they've forgotten it. And I think it bears reminding all of us how the church branded itself from the start. And this is the red dot is where Dartmouth College is, the Ivy League school we have today. And Joseph Smith was born in Sharon, Vermont, which is about a 25-mile ride in the car from Dartmouth. But soon after he was born, when he was about 5 years old, the Smith family moved to Lebanon, New Hampshire, which is right across the river from Dartmouth. And then they moved to Norwich, Vermont. And that was right in the neighborhood of Dartmouth. And as I like to remind people, Hiram Smith attended there for about 4 years at the Morse School at Dartmouth. And so what I'm going to show you, the Smith family were 100% certain, I'm certain they knew what I'm about to share with you from Dartmouth. Now, this is one of the Smith homes. The other one today is a Kentucky Fried Chicken. But this is their home, and by even today's standards, this is a very nice home. I'm not saying it looked just like this, when they lived there, but they actually, both of Joseph Smith's parents came from good families. Joseph Smith's dad, there's a lot of rumors about him being an alcoholic and a bum, and the treasure digging and all of that stuff. But they actually came from good families. But they were right down the street from this place, which is Dartmouth Hall. So any thoughts about that?
Have to unmute. So no, I always feel, and you make this clear every time you come on a podcast about any topic, all roads lead to Dartmouth. I sincerely believe that the origins are right there. And it doesn't matter what topic we talk about, you're always able to pin that to it or tie that in. So we appreciate your knowledge. You are the Dartmouth expert.
Well, I appreciate the compliment, but actually Richard Barron's, I'm writing off he was a true believing member of the church. He wrote an article that was published, and I'm writing off his legacy. But this is Dartmouth Hall. Hiram Smith attended here. He was in classes here. And this building this is what it looks like today. Built in 1784. Joseph Smith was born in 1805. So this was all established before Joseph Smith was even born. And then the Smith family moved right in. Right across the street, literally, from Dartmouth Hall is this. This is Dartmouth's Church of Christ, built in 1771. This is where Hiram Smith attended, according to Richard Barron's, over 1,000 theological lectures, morning and evening. All students, including at Morse School, were required to go to these sermons. And here's the sign on the front of the door, the Church of Christ. So here's a quiz. What do you guess the first name the church was named? The Mormon church was named by Joseph and Hiram Smith.
Let me think. Could it be the Church of Christ?
Yes. You get a trophy.
They even use the little of and stuff in here, almost like you could make a name tag off of that top part.
You could. But of course, they're saying that God revealed this name to them, right? So there's...
Mormon God revealed a lot of things they're going to be changing their mind about, as we'll see. But yeah, the Church of Christ was established well before Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith. They were intimately familiar with this name. It was a restoration movement, along with the Campbellites. This idea of the Church of Christ was nothing new. It's not anything that was revealed to Joseph Smith, except for just simply growing up in his neighborhood, because this concept of Christ's New Testament church being established and a restoration movement called the Church of Christ existed well before Joseph Smith was even born, and certainly they were immersed in this for Joseph Smith, in his case, from 1805 to 1817, for 12 years as he grew up. He knew this. He knew this place. Hiram Smith attended here. This is not. It cannot be objectively or defended or countered. It's just a historical fact.
And wasn't the church established to teach the gospel to the Native Americans?
Oh,
And to
absolutely.
convert
I
the
mean, we
Native
could
Americans?
literally, and I'm happy to do it if you want, do a whole episode on Dartmouth. But yes, that was the mission of the church, was to take the gospel to the Native Americans. And in fact, that was a stated purpose and mission of the church. That concept, along with many others, which we could get on a tangent and I could literally spend all night sharing. That concept was all introduced to Joseph and Hiram in their childhood.
So, and just to be clear, so what you're saying is the first name that Joseph Smith told everybody, hey, Mormon God has revealed what the name of his church is, happens to be the same name as, some other churches in the area, but it is the Church of Christ.
Yeah, that's right, Rebecca. Now, of course, they had moved to Palmyra in 1817. Okay. A lot of folks in Palmyra would not have known this background, and they wouldn't have known of Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith's association with this. So it would have sounded maybe revolutionary to a lot of people that this was Christ's New Testament church being reestablished through a restoration movement. That would sound brand new. But to the folks back in New Hampshire, this would be laughable because this was already well established.
It would be like Landon and I always talk about starting a church, don't we? Right? Like turning Mormonish into a church.
I want to start a church.
If we did that and said, and the name of our church is the Catholic Church, it'd be like, wait, what? That's already been done. So yeah, that's very interesting. So a different location, the Church of Christ might sound sort of new and fresh and revolutionary, but other people are like, yeah, that's already been there. So interesting. But again, it's God. It's God naming it, so you don't mess with that.
Right. And it's an uncomfortable topic because, again, this is baked into Mormon scriptures. The first name of the church was the Church of Christ. And it went by that name for a while until our next stop. And by the way, this is the inside of the church. Here's Hiram Smith that attended this church. And the first pastor of that church, as well as Dartmouth's first professor, was Dr. John Smith. Now, there's a dispute on the genealogy, but I found the original documents that show that Richard Behrens was correct, that Joseph Smith was distantly related to Dr. Smith. It really doesn't matter. Apparently, they believe so. My understanding from Behrens, and I could be wrong, or Behrens could be wrong, but the reason Hiram Smith got in was through this family connection, because Professor Smith was not only a predominant, he was really the predominant figure on the Dartmouth campus. But here you see the actual inside of the Church of Christ right across the street from Dartmouth Hall, where Hiram Smith attended hundreds and hundreds of theological lectures. It was an enormous download and highway of information into the Smith home. And by the way, the doctor that performed the leg surgery on Joseph Smith also founded Dartmouth Medical School. And so as Joseph Smith healed from his surgery, and it was a serious surgery, and it was an innovative medical procedure that Dr. Nathan Smith used, no relationship of Joseph Smith. That was the good news. They saved his leg. The bad news is he had to convalesce for 4 years. So guess who was his personal tutor for 4 years? Hiram Smith, who was spending the other part of the day on the Dartmouth campus. So there is this, just envision the sermons going on here. And by the way, I want to be clear. Dr. Smith had passed away right before the Smith family moved to the proximity. So whether they ever met or not, I don't know. But what we do know is Hiram Smith attended the sermons here. There's this enormous download of information that got transferred, obviously, to Joseph Smith as he tutored him as he convalesced from his leg surgery. You seem spellbound, so I'll move on.
Yeah, no, we're good. We get it. This is great.
I always questioned when I'd hear that story. I'm like, boy, for a backwood poor family, they seem to have gotten the best medical care available almost in the world at that point for Joseph's leg. How did that happen? And that explains it. It was their connection with Dartmouth.
Yeah, and what's suspicious is that whether you're talking about the history of the church, the Saints book, Brian Hale's, his explanation of things, they all very conveniently skip over almost all of this stuff. Basically, Joseph Smith was born in Sharon, Vermont. He had leg surgery, and voila, they show up in Palmyra. They skip the whole Dartmouth thing because they want to make Joseph Smith as uneducated as possible, and they want to make the Book of Mormon this constructed literary masterpiece, and that gap is obviously filled with divinity. Joseph Smith he's very bright naturally. He was very bright. And again, he had an enormous download of information. So Dartmouth was kind of one-stop shopping in terms of starting a religion, because Joseph Smith learned about Protestant Christianity, that's what a lot of the Book of Mormon really is. There's really not a lot of distinct Mormon doctrines in the Book of Mormon, ironically. They learned about Islam. They learned about Greek mythology, multiple worlds, multiple gods, multiple goddesses. That's all Greek mythology taught at Dartmouth in that time frame. They learned about the Masonic temple ceremony because there was a Masonic lodge right in the neighborhood. Excuse me. And they also learned about American folk religion with the mounds and the stoneworks and all these ancient cultures. By the way, Solomon Spaulding's son attended Dartmouth. I think Solomon Spaulding himself attended here, as well as Ethan Smith. His son was classmates with Hiram Smith, and he wrote View of the Hebrews. So your head wants to explode when you see all that was going on right within that building we're looking at.
And when people want to say that they're uneducated, this wasn't just, they didn't just go to college, or Hiram didn't just go to college. He went to religious college. This was a religious college.
Excuse me, I got allergies. I was just out of town.
It's okay. I have a cold too. We're all hanging on by a thread.
We'll work through it together. But so pardon me for that. But I partially agree, Landon. Hiram Smith certainly got a lot of religious education. There's no question of that, because not just Dartmouth, Harvard, Yale, they were all divinity schools to start with. Princeton, etc. But Hiram Smith learned math, and he learned a number of other topics that were more secular. And that's why Hiram Smith became a school teacher. He had an enormously wonderful education by those standards, or by those days' standards. So this is again where it happened. All right, so with Mormon 1.0, the first point, and there's going to be 9, just spoiler alert, we're going to go through 9 rebrandings of the Mormon Church. And Mormon 1.0, the official name of the Mormon Church when it started was the Church of Christ. And what do you know? That was obviously plagiarized from the Dartmouth Church, which is still there to this day. All right. So then we go to Kirtland, Ohio, and it gets rebranded. We're to Mormon Rebranding 2.0. Number 1 was Church of Christ. Then Joseph Smith rebranded the church to the Church of Latter-day Saints. Now, this is just my conjecture. This is my speculation. I don't have any evidence to support this other than it just makes sense to me. And that is, I think Joseph Smith started getting in hot water with the branding of Church of Christ, because people knew about the Campbellites, and I think the word kind of got out. What do you mean you're the Church of Christ? That name was around before you were born. Joseph Campbell was around, well before Joseph Smith was born. So that's my own idea. So it became the Church of Latter-day Saints, and they just dropped Jesus out of it. And here is a picture I took, and I zoomed in on the whatever you call that stone above the window there. And it says right there, House of the Lord, built by the Church of the Latter-day Saints, AD 1834. So the church was started in 1830, the Church of Christ, And around 1834, probably right before that, certainly in the Kirtland era, it became the Church of the Latter-day Saints.
And do we have, is this God has told, is this in the scriptures that now the name shall be the Church of the Latter-day Saints?
It's been a while since I've read the Doctrine and Covenants, but I think it is, but I'd want to confirm that.
Right. But Joseph definitely started referring it to, and interesting, their house of the Lord, Elder Bednar has been making a very concerted effort to rebrand and rename the temple the house of the Lord. He's, flat out saying, we don't call it the temple anymore. We call it the house of the Lord. So
there's another episode, temple rebranding names.
Yeah, they're rebranding right and left. Yeah, we're old enough to catch it though. But no, and I had also heard, and I'm not sure at which point, like you said, hot water, also perhaps debt, things like that, where you just have to kind of change the name. So maybe the creditors can't follow you. There are reasons that you distance yourself from your identity, which is kind of what they're doing now.
Yeah. And remember, Kirtland is not a happy place. That's where the Fanny Alger affair occurred. That's where the Kirtland bank scandal or anti-bank scandal occurred. And a lot of people were flat out fraudulently ripped off and left the church. There was a lot of mess. One of the saddest things about the Mormon Church buying all of Kirtland and the reorganized or the Community of Christ assets out is when you would go here, and I have business around the country, so I'd stopped in here several times over the years. You go to the Community of Christ people, they're very honest, and they kind of, I don't want to say I can only speak for the people that I talked with, which may not be representative of the whole group, obviously, but they were almost, they had a fun time joking about the fact that, Joseph Smith had an affair in that building and he did this in that building. That's Fanny Alger lived there. And they're very open about the history. I think obviously that's all going to be whitewashed away with the new takeover.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to point to the barn at all. Not anymore.
Not anymore. All right. So we're rebranding 3.0 finally, and this is, I'm certain in the Doctrine and Covenants, it got rebranded a third time, Mormon Rebranding 3.0, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is a mouthful. The logo, I don't know that there was a logo. This is a modern building, a picture of a modern building, obviously, but it's dishonest because it has it says 1930, not 1830. So this is, obviously this name was appropriate for them, but that's the name we know by now. It's now in its third rebranding, but it gets better. Then we went in through the logos, rebranding 4.0. And I remember this. I was a kid and I was in high school in 1975, and the church came out with this corporate logo, and we thought it looked so cool because it looked like a corporate logo. and from 1975 to 1995, the church had this logo, and all the meeting houses had this logo. Are there any of these logos left up in Utah? I really don't know.
I thought this still was the logo.
Oh, no, this is an old one.
Yeah, this is an older one.
Yeah,
I think now I'm sure you have a picture, but now different things are in different lines, I think.
Oh, okay. This is the one that was on my name tag when I went on a mission.
Yeah, so that's why.
Yeah,
and
that was on mine too.
And they have the hyphen there because, as I'm sure we'll talk about, the Church of Jesus Christ, somebody else owns without the hyphen. So.
And they also own, we have a small D and they have a big D. I mean, we're really splitting hairs there. Yeah. The difference is we got a ton of money.
Corporate logos.
So anyway, okay. Mormon Rebranding 5.0. We got this new logo. They minimize some of the language and make Jesus Christ stand out, huge with this emphasis on Jesus. And this logo was in play from 1996 to 2019, so not that long ago.
No, and I remember them making a big deal of this.
I do remember that.
We are focusing on Jesus Christ. Why? Because a lot of people were going, you guys don't really talk about Jesus. He's not the focus of your religion, right? So they're like, oh yeah, watch this. We're going to put him in huge font, and that means he is the focus of our religion.
Well, what's interesting to me, and again, this is just my own experience. You listen to a lot of the talks, they talk about Jesus, but they don't talk about what Jesus said or did,
Yeah.
particularly charity and being altruistic and charitable and giving. That doesn't come up a lot, but that's really the big conversation on the Christian side of things. Okay, so we go from Mormon Rebranding 5.0. Here's 6.0. This is the logo we have today from 5 years ago to now, where you have this statue of Jesus, and they made the of Latter-day Saints even smaller. The point size went down, again, rebranding to emphasize this. We want to lip sync Christianity more effectively. So here you go.
Yeah, I had never noticed that they very much made of Latter-day Saints smaller. And I've looked at this logo over and over because I think a lot of us were stunned when this came out, because this is very Christian. This statue is not an LDS statue. This is a, Christian statue from, was it Switzerland, where Kimball saw this and said, I want this reproduction. And, he's got those meaty, beefy forearms. And yeah, it's very different, I think, very Christian. But yeah, I had never noticed that.
I thought it was very Catholic. It seems like a Catholic logo as opposed to a Christian logo to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Catholic Christian.
It's in an obvious attempt to turn the dial up on Jesus, turn the dial down on Joseph Smith, turn the dial down on Latter-day Saints. And I'll just toggle back. Here's the old logo. You can see the font size of the top line is the same as Latter-day Saints, and then rebranded, it got proportionally a lot smaller.
The incredible shrinking Latter-day Saints.
Yeah.
I always hated that, though. My parents were real sticklers, and they said, if anybody asks you what church you belong to, you must say the whole name. Of course, this is in the 70s, when I'm a little kid, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I knew it was embarrassing to say. It was so awkward, and I just hoped and prayed that nobody would, ask me what church I belonged to, because I knew back then you didn't really say Mormon. You didn't say Mormon church. You said the Church of Jesus Christ. We've kind of done this whole first circle kind of a thing, which I think you'll talk about. But I just remember being really embarrassed having to spit that out as a kid. What church do you go to?
Yeah. Let's count it out. I'm going to count syllables. Yeah. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. 11 syllables. Yeah. Or Catholic or Mormon. So there you go. All right. So we go from 6.0 to 7.0. Now we're proud. We're loud and proud about Mormon. The rebranding 7.0 was this I'm a Mormon campaign, and it was in your face. I went on a mission to England, and I know the subway system, and this stuff was plastered in New York, all over the place. They spent millions of dollars with this I'm a Mormon campaign. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, and people would give little testimonials. Hundreds of videos, which are still online. And as I understand it, they've kind of dubbed out or dubbed over when they say I'm a Mormon. They still let them tell their faith promoting story of being part of the church, but then they kind of cut it at the point where you're going to say I'm a Mormon. So, but yeah, that was huge. I'm a Mormon. Yep, that was it. And we had, from the pulpit, they were saying Mormon means more good. They were making up, making up etymologies for the name, right? They were singing, I'm a Mormon boy. There were, you do it very well, Landon. There were movies in the theater, movies in the theater, a worldwide release where you'd go and find out what is a Mormon. And I think it worked because I think Mormon was kind of a beloved term. I mean, at least a term that everybody may be associated with. They do charitable works. I mean, erroneously, of course, but I think it worked. They got the word out.
Yeah. Any thoughts from you, Landon?
Well, you had the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. It wasn't the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Choir. It was the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. So they and that gone back for 100 years or whatever. So
yeah,
I had a book called Meet the Mormons when I was a little kid. So this must have been in the early 70s. I used to pour through that. It had pictures of Temple Square, but I remember the title, Meet the Mormons. So it was not a dirty word back then.
No, it was
really amped up.
Yeah, loud and proud. I'm a Mormon. That's how we rolled. Okay, so we're gonna go from 7.0 to 8.0. Now we've got Russell M. Nelson saying that Mormon is a victory for Satan. So now there's a switch. Mormon God really confused us on that one, but and there's a picture of Russell Nelson with his two wives next to him. Uh, and I got to disagree. Not all roads don't lead to Dartmouth; they lead to polygamy.
Okay,
But
you're right.
well, Lindsay Hanson Park is right. But that again is another episode. Um, so yeah, now we've gone full circle, and from Mormon is loud and proud to Mormon is a victory for Satan. So a very confusing message to the world. Well, I'll share this in a minute when we get to it.
And it's interesting because if we believe, as we're supposed to, that God is the one that is directing these changes, right? These men aren't speaking, out of a hat. They are being directed by God. Here you have President Nelson, when he was just Elder Nelson, giving a talk about don't use the nickname, don't use Mormon. Then you have President Hinckley giving a talk in the very next conference and saying, let's not listen to that. Mormon is good. And again, aren't all these people supposed to be talking for God? It's very confusing. And then you have, as soon as President Nelson takes the reins and is in power, God whispers in his ear, you were right back then. It is a victory for that. I've never known of a God to be so concerned with a name, and it leaves all of us with our head spinning because we don't know what to say. And I think, I don't know, just the fact that I still use the word Mormon all the time because I was a Mormon, I am a Mormon, I'm culturally a Mormon. You get a lot of pushback all the time. I'm sure we've all experienced it. As soon as they came out and said, this is what you're supposed to say and think, everyone says, we are not Mormons. We are the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I'm like, well, I'm a Mormon. I was a Mormon and I am a Mormon and I will be a Mormon in the future. So
there you go. Landon, what do you think?
I'm the same way. I continue to use the term because it describes who I am and my background, and people understand it. And they, if I say I grew up Mormon, I did grow up Mormon because I was Mormon when I grew up.
Yep,
so
that's it.
I'm not afraid to say it or use it. I think this whole change that Mormon is a victory for Satan really should be Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is a victory for President Nelson because he overcame the butt kicking that he got from President Hinckley, and it's just pettiness that he outlived him and now he's right and he gets to make the rules. Yeah. So I always felt like when they made that name change, it's like you've just caught everybody between your little spat and drug everyone into it.
Mm-hmm. I have family that's very much into the church, and as a lot of us do. And when I say Mormon, you would have thought that I threw up all over the kitchen table. I mean, it was just abhorrent, repulsed by the mere mention of the word Mormon. And I'll say, look, as soon as all of you start referring to me as, oh, great one, handsome and intellectual, I will call you whatever you want me to call you. But until I am called what I want to be called, oh, great one, handsome and intellectual, we'll go with Mormon. And they don't know what to say about that because it's really interesting that we have to abide by their rules, but our rules are insignificant and irrelevant. And there's a real profound double standard there.
Oh, there absolutely is. And, talk about being arrogant. If you read the style guide, which they amped up to make sure everybody understood how they should be referred to, they say we should be referred to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. What's funny is that I see most people get that wrong in the media and they call it the Church of the Latter-day Saints. They do say that quite often because they just can't wrap their brain around it. But in the style guide, it says, once you state that in an article or in the media, then you can refer to it as the church. I mean, that's kind of arrogant. There are lots of churches, or the restored church. How is someone supposed to say that? That's making a judgment. Are they the restored church? But that's an acceptable thing that you can say too, is because, We're the restored church. So it's interesting to read that style guide. It really tells you what their mindset is and what they're thinking. But from what I've seen, most headlines may try to use the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, comma, otherwise known as the Mormons, because there's no way to explain who we are without using that. So most of the media tries, but fails.
Well, I also think it's very arrogant of President Nelson to say, I get to say what we all want to be called, because okay, if you want to be called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and you want to use that term all the time, that's fine. But I was still active or somewhat in at this time, and I'm like, no, I'm a Mormon. That's who I am, and I want to use the term Mormon. Why do I not get to use the term I want to use simply because it's not the term you want me to use? So that was the problem I had with it. Why do you get to just change what everybody has to call me when I'm perfectly fine calling myself a Mormon?
Yeah. And it was so wasteful. I mean, this rebranding cost millions and millions of dollars, as we can assume, and we've heard behind the scenes. And, marketing people were rolling in their graves. Why would you take a global beloved name that everybody knows and get rid of it? Like the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Can anyone tell me what it's called now? It's the the choir on Temple Square. Whatever. It's lost its luster. It really has. And people don't know what to say anymore. And just the waste in changing the logos and the websites. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. And like Landon said, it seems like a petty spat, nothing to do with God, and everybody's caught in the middle of it. I've even heard anecdotally, they say that people that are in marketing at the church kind of still have everything on hand for a return to using the word Mormon. Oh. We'll see if that happens. I kind of believe it. But we know, I think maybe that they were trying to distance themselves from Mormon because, I don't know, ex-Mormon or Mormon fundamentalist. There are a lot of other groups that claim proudly that they are Mormon, and maybe they don't want that Google search to pull that up. But we've had guests on that have talked about the stats, and people still search Mormon. They don't search the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So whether it was successful or not, I don't know. It just caused a lot of confusion.
Well, and it's telling that, they call themselves the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but then anyone who leaves is an ex-Mormon. They still use the term anti-Mormon and ex-Mormon. Why don't you say anti-Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or ex-Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? You're okay using Mormon for those who have left, but you're not okay using Mormon for those that are in, even though they both came from the same root.
Yeah, and a fun one on Facebook disputes is they'll call me an anti-Mormon, and I'll say, well, okay, well, I guess since you're into labels, you're an anti-Christian. And they hate that. Yeah. They don't know what to do with that one. It's really quite entertaining in my warped mind to just see all the nonsense. And you're right. I forgot to even mention the LDS church, the restored church. You can make this list longer if you wanted to easily. But getting back to Mormon, you got the Mormon Trail. You got not just the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. You have the Mormon
Mormon Battalion.
What's that?
Oh my gosh.
The Mormon Battalion. They still have the Museum of the Mormon Battalion and the signs on the road. This is the Mormon Battalion Trail or whatever.
And what about the Mormon Cricket? They just in the last couple months tried to rename that. Somebody introduced a bill because it's a slur and a slam, and everyone's like, no, it's a beloved name of a, well, not so beloved insect, but it has a heritage and a history. It's a Mormon cricket. They're just throwing everything away and rebranding to the extreme, but we're not going to let them, are we? Because we're going to continue to talk about it.
It's the M word.
The M word.
It's really absurd to just see how wrapped up angry people get when you just say Mormon, which is what we were called for over 150 years.
Well, and why did they get so angry?
Mormon Rebranding 9.0, and this is where we are today, and this is what kind of spurred this whole conversation, is the Church of Jesus Christ. They're trying to shorten it, at least informally, and in everyday conversation and everything else. So it's kind of funny. I got a text once from my sister And she was all over my case saying, well, the Church of Jesus Christ teaches this, and the Church of Jesus Christ teaches that. So I made a list of every Church of Jesus Christ I could quickly find, and I'm about to show you the list. And I sent it back to her. I said, well, okay, great. Which Church of Jesus Christ? I think it's number 18 on the list of whatever. So the problem they've got with this newfangled rebranding 9.0 is that there are lots of Church of Jesus Christ. They'll never, even with all their money, I don't see how they're going to buy up and gobble up that brand for themselves. I know they got the website domain, with, again, they're flexing money, but here's a Church of Jesus Christ, has nothing to do with Mormonism, and they're all over the place. I was driving down the road. I had a case in Flint, Michigan, with the water stuff, and I took a picture of the church. I think the picture on the left I took and sent it to Steve Pinecker because he kind of collects this stuff. He's really into the restoration movements, but they're everywhere. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I was going to say about the website. They were able to get churchofjesuschrist.org, but the website thechurchofjesuschrist.org belongs to the Bickertonites, belongs to Sidney Rignan's church. And so far, they're not parting with it. And I think I might have been on Steve's show when we talked about this, and he had talked to some of the, higher ups there, the apostles, and said, are you worried that the LDS mainstream church is trying to kind of move into that territory and that name? And this person in the Bickertonite church says, no, we're not worried. God knows which one is the true Church of Jesus Christ. So everybody thinks they are the one. But yeah, if somebody were just to Google the Church of Jesus Christ, I'm telling you all to do it now, you will arrive at the Bickertonite website. And Landon and I have gone to a Bickertonite branch. It's really interesting. I feel like it's kind of what old Mormonism was. It was really fascinating. I loved attending their service. But yeah, you can't have a more generic name. You just can't. And you see this all over the place on the church's Facebook or Instagram or both humanitarian page. It says Church of Jesus Christ in a logo. And now that we're talking about it, you will start noticing in articles in the church news, it will refer to it as the Church of Jesus Christ, and also, in speaking. So you're seeing this, like you said, Randy, a soft rollout. You're seeing it, and just like House of the Lord instead of Temple. And pretty soon everyone will just be using that name, and they'll say, oh, you're so old school to say Latter-day Saint. We never used that, right?
Well, what's so funny is I guess, it still upsets a lot of TBMs to call it the Mormon church. But now if you really want to make them mad, you say, when they say the Church of Jesus Christ, you say, you mean the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
Which branch? Yeah, you used to be able to say which vision and get people to go, what? Now you can say which branch, because I'm telling you, people don't understand this. I remember having a conversation with a young adult, and she was probably like in her mid-20s. And she was faithful Mormon. I just offhandedly mentioned how many offshoots there were of the LDS church. Lots of them have names like this that are similar. And she said, well, what do you mean offshoots? There aren't what? She had no idea. She would never understand Steve Pinecker, right? Who has his finger on the pulse of every offshoot there ever was. But I think your standard, typical mainstream faithful LDS does not really understand what kind of erupted, from the origins that our church came from.
Yeah. And why are they removing Latter-day Saints? Is it that they don't believe that there's really any latter days? They don't really believe Jesus is coming back, or is it that they don't believe we're saints? I don't know. Is it non-Christian to call yourself a saint? I'm trying to figure out why they removed that piece.
We will never know. My best guess is that they're trying to get as far away from the weirdness as they possibly can.
Yep.
And people are not paying that much attention to the Mormon church, certainly not as much attention as the Mormon church likes to think people are. It's a very small church, relatively speaking. And so as we're doing all this rebranding, obviously these things aren't working very well, if at all. We've been through numerous rebrands since the church started. And I think at this point, it's just like with Google, where they're taking Angel Moroni and putting a cross on there. That was unthinkable as a kid or on my mission or even in my adulthood to use a cross or recognize the cross. And now we're using, or the Mormon Church is using it. So it's just in my mind, a campaign to separate from the weirdness and get it behind us as far as possible. All I can say is good luck, because this stuff, along with the racism that's in the Book of Mormon, along with the Trinity that's in the Book of Mormon, along with a host of things that are just baked into Mormon scriptures, good luck getting away from it all.
Yeah, and that is what they're trying to do. And I've talked to various marketing people that have reached out with theories on this, and they're just like, this has the earmarks of a company, a corporation that's kind of spiraling down, that has a brand image problem, that has issues, that's becoming unpopular, that's losing subscribers or customers. And what do? We'll call ourselves something different. This will be amazing. It's kind of like this death spiral that corporations do at the end, where you think smoke and mirrors, you can cover some things up, you can announce new exciting songs, name changes, the fluff, right? But like you said, it doesn't address, the problems, the rot in the inside. So I think that's kind of accurate.
They seem to have an identity crisis.
Mm-hmm.
When I was growing up, you knew exactly who you were and what you believed inside the church. Now it's, am I Mormon? No. Am I LDS? No. What? Am I a member of the Church of Jesus Christ? Is that what I'm now supposed to be referring to myself as? What is my doctrines now? When we were growing up, we were going to get a planet. We were, we all knew what the gospel was, and now no, we don't believe that anymore. It's an identity crisis. Nobody knows who they are anymore, what they're supposed to believe, because it seems to change weekly. The one thing we do know is everything is now a temporary commandment. Be ready to change it at any time. So you're supposed to hold this deep belief in something that could change at any time. What's the purpose of having a deep belief in something that can be yanked out from under you at any moment, and you just have to change with it and say, oh, now I believe that, even though I've believed this all this time. Now I'm just believing something different because they yanked the carpet out and said, now you're this or now you're that.
Yeah, like the steeple doctrine. That's why that was such a great example. No one had heard of that. The steeple wasn't really important. And then suddenly it needed to be important for the church. And they told them, better be important. And there it is. So this kind of reminds me of John DeLynn sent me an article today in an episode from Quick Media about shadow organizations, or even a shadow church within the church. And it's exactly what you were just describing, Landon, where there's, a sort of a faction, a group that has a certain set of beliefs. They still sort of have the other beliefs, but they're existing within the body of the church. And we've talked about that before. The fact that upper leadership never makes definitive statements about a lot of things allows these groups, Restore Mormons. We did that episode with you, Randy. That's kind of a little, sort of a little shadow organization. Polygamy deniers. That's another organization that exists inside the church. So because there's no, like you said, there's nothing definitive, everybody can come up with their own little dogma. It's really kind of fascinating.
Yeah, it is very entertaining, fascinating, interesting, whatever you want to call it. I think that Mormonism, in a lot of people's mind, in the public's mind, is now so wrapped up in things that are synonymous to Jehovah's Witnesses and Scientology and Seventh-day Adventists, etc. And and just like the Scientologists, they're in LA, not far from here. And you go to LA and you walk by the Scientology buildings. They've done this again, this total rebranding. They're kind of on the I'm a Mormon thing, where look how cool we are. And we're Scientologists and we got our little, electrodes that measure our body, whatever it is. I don't understand. But their buildings are notoriously empty. And that's, I think, where Mormonism is heading. I think the temples are going to be largely empty. The chapels are being torn down. They're largely empty. It doesn't take, of course, the church conceals its numbers and statistics. They know exactly how many people show up on Sunday, but they hide that information. But we know that from 31,500 units with an average of 100 people. And the last times I've been to church around the country, around the world, as I travel on my business stuff, you are lucky to have 100 people in the room. So saying an average of 100, that's only 3.5 million out of 17 million. That's an 18% activity rate. So they're boasting this new explosive growth. Let's see how many people though are active and what their retention is, 6 months from now, because we know it's really dismal.
Yeah, even 17.5 million. If you gave them, okay, fine, we'll give you that. Everybody's active, everybody's there. That is a very small organization when you compare it to the other burned over district churches that started, the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Seventh-day Adventists. And, they have numbers, I think, that are more accurately reported. Yeah, it's super small. I never realized when I was growing up in Mormonism in like the 70s that it was, there were like 1 million people. It was a teeny tiny, it was my whole world, of course, because I was immersed in it with my Orthodox family, but it was so small. But now here we are, we're going to be the Church of Jesus Christ, right? We're taking a big name.
They are small, but they have a lot of money and they have a lot of political power, and they have a lot of political power because of the fact that they have so many senators and so many representatives outside of disproportional to their number, because of the fact that they settled the West in one big group and are able to do that. So, name me how many Seventh-day Adventist senators are there? How many JW representatives are there? I'm guessing none. There might be one I don't know of, but the church has, way more proportionally, because they control so many states politically and vote as a bloc. So that's what makes them, I guess, in mainstream, they're a little more noticeable, and they have a big university that plays D1 sports that the Seventh-day Adventists don't have, JWs don't have. So they've really marketed themselves in that way to look like they're bigger than they are.
Yeah. For a very small church, they make a lot of noise. It's kind of like growing up, and as a kid, I thought everybody, the whole world, were Troy High School warriors. Because that's your world. That's the people you hang out with every day, all day. And so, of course, everybody in the world was a Troy High School warrior. It's the same with the church, particularly when you live in Provo and Orem, where there are more churches than fire hydrants. You tend to think that broadcasts across the world. It doesn't take long to get away from that to realize it's very, very tiny. I have a whole different perspective because growing up in Southern California, Mormonism is a relatively very small thing. So you learned real quick how to get along with, diverse people. But coming out of Utah, I think it's a whole different mindset.
Oh, absolutely.
It is. I've just been really surprised as we deal with different towns, in different states and their city councils and, the LDS temple building, how many LDS people are involved in city government. And I know that they are encouraged to do that, kind of like put in place in case you're needed. It's sort of like a sleeper cell sort of a thing. And it's interesting to see these people just go, wow, we didn't realize, that this was happening. And now they're very gun shy about it. They're like, I don't know if I want an LDS person on my town council because I don't feel that they will represent the town's interests. I think they have a higher allegiance, right? So that's fascinating. And maybe possibly the Church of Jesus Christ is a way that, if you're running for office and people want to know your religious background, which sometimes they do, you don't have to say Church of Jesus Christ, a Latter-day Saint. You can just say, I'm just a Christian. I go to the local Church of Jesus Christ. Sounds very innocuous. And of course, this is from the beginning of Mormonism, right? Going into towns, taking over, getting on the city government, voting as a bloc. We know how this goes down. But yeah.
Well, and it works the other way too, because the church likes to call into leadership people who have distinguished themselves that way, so that they can say, oh, the mayor is, so if you want to move up in the church, you serve in your community, and all of a sudden, oh, well, we need to call him as the stake president. Everyone in the community already respects him. So it works both ways. They like to put people into those positions and have them there when they need them. And likewise, the members like to be in those positions because the church looks upon them favorably as someone who can do them favors, and therefore they want them in leadership.
Yeah. And ironically, it works the other way around when you go to, I hate to even, well, it is what it is. I volunteered for years until COVID. The state of California shut it down permanently, but I volunteered at the homeless shelter here in Laguna Beach, and I was the only Mormon there that I ever saw. And it was kind of freakish. In other words, they go for community roles if it brings power and prestige
Yes, high
to
profile.
the organization that the church might monopolize at some future point. Like you said, a sleeper cell, really. But I've never seen them in San Quentin prison. I've seen lots of atheists. I've seen a lot of agnostics and a lot of people of faith who all cooperate to help the incarcerated. I've seen them in the Orange County jail, I haven't seen them in the Orange County ever once in the Orange County jail. And I've met people from innumerable denominations and non-denominations, never Mormons, in San Quentin, Orange County jail, and the homeless shelter. We have 2 homeless shelters here in Laguna Beach. And I got to say, I think to be completely accurate, I do know 1 or 2 Mormons who do participate in the homeless shelter. I never happen to run into them, but I want to acknowledge there are 1 or 2 that I'm aware of, but you don't see them there. You do see them showing up now more in places that are going to bring power, money to the organization.
Or a crisis situation. There's major flooding and they show up with their shirts and everything, to wearing their shirts. The Mormon church is here to help because they know there's going to be cameras there. But you like you say, you look at the homeless shelters, Salt Lake City, you look at Utah, none of the homeless shelters are run by the church. None. They don't run a single homeless shelter. In fact, when they tried to make warming centers in Davis County, here where I live, people flocked to the city council meetings to block it. They didn't want those in their neighborhoods. So you look around, and in Utah, the homeless shelters are run by the Catholic services. And the Mormons, at Christmas time, the wards volunteer to go and slop the food onto the plate and tell the youth, but they don't. And they might send some funding to show, oh, look, we're doing something by throwing money at it, but they don't set up the infrastructure. They don't do any of that. It's very self-centered, and they will give, but they always make sure they get big credit for whatever they give.
Like the giving machine. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, when they say we give service, well, sure they do to their own members, all day long, but not to the community, not in terms of the charities that are out there. It really we better move on because I'm going to get mad.
I know. Don't even get me started on temple service or going to the temple as service. People do believe that, right? Ordinances for people that don't exist anymore. A lot of people consider that great service,
Yeah. Well, and that's another episode because these Masonic temple ceremonies are not mentioned in the Book of Mormon, which contains the fullness of the gospel, nor is it mentioned in the New Testament, but apparently it's a big deal now. But they're restoring something that was never there in the first place. Anyway, moving on. So the last thing is, here's the list I promised. It's a long list, and this is not a complete list, but there's so many churches of Jesus Christ around the country, around the world. That's why it's kind of fun when I get these messages. Another message I just got from a sibling, another sister sent me, or sent everybody in the family, a Deseret News article that the church had given $20,000 to some thing. That's about 7 seconds of interest. I mean,
not even
that. Such a token, nothing amount. But anyway, that's why when you're told we're the Church of Jesus Christ, my suggestion, what I do for a lot of fun, is say which one, and I sent them this information.
And it's funny because the Bickertonite is the Church of Jesus Christ. They never changed it.
They never changed. That's the 1860s.
They must be the true prophets who realized, that this is the name it's supposed to be, because evidently the Brighamite prophets have to keep changing it.
Yeah.
I feel like they want to blend in. You just pick the most innocuous name, pick something that's going to get lost in the crowd, and then maybe you can ditch everything that happened before. Because when you hear Mormon, all you think is polygamy. They will never be able to get out from under that ever. The common person goes, oh yeah, how many wives do you have? Or polygamy. So maybe by choosing something that's so innocuous, and having the missionaries on the social media say, we're the Church of Jesus Christ, maybe they're hoping to blend in and leave that all in the past. Maybe.
But aren't they going to have to add some sort of, just like you had to here, bracketed name to differentiate themselves from all the rest of these Church of Jesus Christ?
Brighamite, maybe. Yeah, because look at all these.
Right now, the Latter-day Saint is kind of separating it, but once they remove that, they're going to have to somehow differentiate from the other churches of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And these are the churches of Jesus Christ. The Church of Christ, as I said, was, at Dartmouth and before. Mm-hmm. And that list would, we'd be going through libraries because that's such a common, name for churches. So that's kind of what I got. I think that we're on brand 9.0, maybe 11.0 if you count the Restored Church and the LDS Church. But it's entertaining. It's fun to watch. We'll see what's next.
It is fun to watch. Do you think that they'll officially, like the announcement, now we will be called this, or do you think it's just this soft continuing rollout? Like I said, I came across the email where the person had said, oh, I've been told in my ward to only say Church of Jesus Christ as I'm teaching, to help the members get used to that. Or the influencers who are told by the marketing company, don't say Latter-day Saints. Do you think it'll just continue to be this soft rollout, or will there someday be from conference, we are now called the Church of Jesus Christ? I mean, I don't know. I think it could go either way.
I think that the churches officially changed their name twice before. They've changed a lot of logos and nicknames, but on one hand, they've done it before. On the other hand, I think they would really have a hard time because the Church of Jesus Christ was taken well before they existed. There's so many churches by that name. They gotta hang on to this thing, at least for legal documents, the Latter-day Saint thing, to differentiate themselves. But my guess is they won't, but they'll want to.
Yeah. So it'll just kind of be when they talk. On paper, they'll still be Latter-day, but when they talk and announce themselves and, in the media, they'll be the Church of Jesus Christ. So it'll be interesting to watch. And like you, I've had a lot of pushback when I post about this. I don't know why people are so upset by this, but there is pushback. They are not. That is not happening. That's not what's going on. And I want to say, why would you be so upset about this? When you look at this list, look at the history, the Church of Christ, the Church of the Latter-day, the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day, it has morphed. So why do you think this is so upsetting to people that they, want to fight us back on social media on this?
Yeah, I don't know. That baffles me too, because I think this is I don't want to use triggering language, but I think this is a worthy story. I think it's another data point, if you will, of a church that keeps abandoning its past, whether trying to abandon polygamy or Adam God theory or blood atonement. This is just another data point where the church is trying to abandon its past because, frankly, I think they're embarrassed about their past. And I think anytime you get one of these significant data points, we got to talk about it.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely right. What do you think, Landon? Final thoughts on this? I'm just mesmerized by this list. I'm just reading down the whole thing. It's so much. Oh my gosh.
I always I had fun with this when President Nelson changed and said you had to call yourself the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because it was at the same time that I was leaving the church. And so a lot of people put out a letter to say, oh, I've left the church or whatever. So I actually turned it around, and in our Christmas letter, I said the opposite, that my family had moved on to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I remained a Mormon. And people were completely confused as to what I was saying. And they called and said, did Landon leave the church? Guess they couldn't tell because I was going, yeah, they all left and became members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I was really disappointed in them, so it was kind of fun to do that. And this name changing thing is just seems like they've lost their identity. It was so established when I was a youth. You knew who you were, you knew what church you came from, you knew what they believed, and they they've really just changed everything. And I don't even recognize the church anymore. And I've only been out, less than a decade, and I can't walk in the church and even reckon where am I supposed to go? There's no longer priesthood and Sunday school, and that's every other week, and they're combined the high priest and the elders quorum, and it's 2 hours long. I don't even know what to do anymore if I go in the church. So this is just another case of changing the language to try to hide something, and it's clear they're trying to become more Christian. Just got a newspaper, Deseret News, sent something in the mail that's like an insert, and I opened it up, and there was a Christian rock group. And it was in the Deseret News, and it said, yeah, the young men's president and the young women's president was there at the concert, and it was a Christian rock band, not Mormon Christian rock band. It was a Christian rock band, but they brought them in for all the youth, and they were all in, and I was going, that would never have happened when I was a youth. Never would we see a Christian rock group and the young men's president tell you, go do that, boys. It'd be, oh no, we don't do that. So they have completely rebranded themselves, and I think it's going to bite them in the butt because people just don't know who they are anymore.
Yeah. Well, we were peculiar, and we were told that was something to be proud of, And
that
now,
didn't work.
Exactly. But now, like you said, Landon, you walk into an LDS building, you can see women in pants with, a tank top, kind of a shirt. I mean, really, where are we? Cats and dogs living together is absolutely crazy. But it's funny when we bring this up, I think people push back and say, yeah, it's all directed by the Lord, though. Don't you believe that the Lord can make changes as you move along? And I'm like, yeah, but the fact that you're saying it's always been this way, right? That's the thing that gets me. We've always said this.
Why does the Lord need to change? Why? He knows everything. Why wouldn't he just set it up right the first place? I mean, I get you're going to change your clothing to match the current styles, and you're not going to live like the Amish, but your main teachings and your main theology and the emphasis of the programs, why is that all changing? Why didn't Jesus just pick right the first place?
Yeah. Well, the leadership of the church is in a very awkward place because on one hand, they got just enormous amounts of money. But on the other hand, they can't retain membership, at all. So while they're twisting and turning labels like the Wizard of Oz, trying to make something work, really, to me, and I hate to sound so cynical, but they just come off as very desperate, very insecure, really not sure what they're doing. I think where they're ultimately, as they try to reinvent themselves as Christians, which is obviously where they're going with the Google Maps and everything else, is, excuse me, when people understand that when we use just the semantics and the languaging, when people say the word God, and I don't care if you're Hindu or Buddhist or Christian or Muslim, you're talking about a spirit, an intelligent creative force that literally fills the universe, and right down to spinning the atoms and everything in between. That's what God means to the rest of the world. And when you point out Mormon God is a resurrected man living on a planet near Kolob with lots of wives, that is
Who's
not
a
winning
realtor.
strategy.
He's a real estate god. He loves his real estate. Yeah.
who has a thing for steeples. So yeah, I mean, they're really on a fool's errand, I think, no matter what direction they go, because these things are baked into their scriptures. In the age of the internet where people can Google things so quickly and have instant access like that, all you need to know is that that point or any number of these points to say, or just watch South Park. That's where you get true Mormon doctrine, quite honestly, with the seer stone and the hat and everything else. It's really kind of fun. They're in Salt Lake City playing whack-a-mole, and the mole pops up and they try and whack it, and they try and whack another one, and they're just frantically trying to beat down all these problems that they got. And it's fun to watch. But just like Rosa Parks never left slavery alone, I'm never going to leave Mormonism alone. I think people should just be told both sides of the story and let them make their decisions for themselves. But I think as long as we're out there talking about it, we're doing our part to just let people know there's another side of this story.
And that's it. That's right. That's a great way to wrap it up, Randy. I love it. So it reminds me of, no, I'm not wrapping it up. One more comment. We had Megan Connor on, Lori Ballow's cousin, and she talked about when an organization changes language, subtly, it's leading its people down a path to a new mindset, a new trajectory. So when you start using, House of the Lord instead of Temple, you start using Church of Jesus Christ instead of the full name, you start talking about covenant path, temporary commandments, you're guiding the people slowly and carefully along to, a different place, which I believe, and I think you guys do too, is mainstream Christianity. Although I feel like there are some places where it's really going to butt up against it. We will see if they're willing to make some of those changes, like the Godhead, right? That's a huge problem. So anyway, it's important. And I want everybody to keep an eye out for this. In fact, post about it, send us things that you see where they're using the Church of Jesus Christ, either on a local level or in media, because once you start noticing it, you'll go, oh my gosh, they really are doing this. Like you can't not see it once you see it. So please comment and let us know if you guys have noticed this. And I encourage you to keep an eye because it's meaningful. It means something. It's not happening by accident. So please like and subscribe to Mormonish Podcast. And if you'd like to be made aware of when the new episodes come out, you can hit that notification bell. You can always make a donation to Mormonish. We have links in the show notes to Donor Box, and we are a nonprofit. And we absolutely appreciate every one of you that do donate. It means so much to us and allows us to continue having fantastic guests like Dr. Randy Bell on. We also have links in the show notes to our merch store. And thanks again, Randy, for just coming on. I love it how we can just chat and then we're like, let's do an episode. I'll put some slides. It's like a 16-hour turnaround with Randy. It's just great. I love it. But this was important. I wanted forever to have everything outlined like this, point by point, the changes, and then to have this list made public. So you did it. And thanks again, Landon, for co-hosting as always. We'll see everybody next time on Mormonish. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share. You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.